Good morning, friends. Let me come to the next issues of introduction to the general equilibrium. So, let me now, in the last lecture, we were having a small discussion about why do we, move from partial equilibrium to general equilibrium. Why? What are the premise, in fact, being leveled against this particular thing by Srafa, or the transition was in fact smoothed by Srafa's criticism. That is what really we, in fact, discussed about in the last lecture. So let me now come to the general equilibrium setup after that sort of an introduction, uh, and see that how the Walrus in kind in fact got its prominence. Now, making partial equilibrium then to general equilibrium, the agenda is the title in which I basically discuss first. And as we know that in the general equilibrium of a simplest kind, we do have a two-sector economy, like exchange economy, that is two individual consumer A and B, and you have two product X and Y, and a production economy, that is two products X and Y, and a two factor L and K. And then you have a general equilibrium of all the factors and the product are in equilibrium, that is two individual consumer A and B, two products X and Y, and two factor L and K simultaneously get their share, and they strike their balance, and that balance is what is called the general equilibrium. So this is what is roughly anybody can speak as what is a general equilibrium. So in that setup, the first thing is the economy, the characteristics of the economy, which talks about is the exchange economy. Okay, so in that exchange economy, that exchange process itself is being treated as a kind of a production of kind. All right, so let's look into the nitty-gritties of that. Two individual A and B, two product X bar, Y bar. That means there is this fixed X and this fixed Y. Assume a world with a new production and with fixed endowment of X and Y, hence the line on top. So it's a given endowment in that sense. Now there comes the model which was modeled by mathematician Edgeworth, and that is what is called the Edgeworth box diagram. So look at the world from individual A's perspective, and look at the world of individuals B's perspective, and see that where there they can actually achieve a sort of balance. That is, if you look into the A and B's world, form a Edgeworth box diagram, and that box, if you look into the box and their interaction, then they will be achieving a sort of balance, and that balance is called the uh, the equilibrium, what we call later as the Paretian equilibrium in that sense. So I will come to that. Look at if that is the case of Edgeworth, then you have two individual. Then let us look at the first individual's case, A's case. So A is having some fixed X and fixed Y endowment, and then for him the utility from the fixed X and Y would be the downward sloping the utility. If he consume y more, then his utility of consuming more Y and gives same level of utility, a trade-off, that is X small amount of X and highest amount of Y gives a given amount of utility, and or vice versa, more small amount of Y and highest amount of X give a same utility in that sense. So the cube marginal utility of the X and Y is being applied here, and therefore they have only one indifference curves. Very simple standard model in that sense. Now if you look into the same for B, then you will have the same thing on the other side. So if you combine both the A and B together of their X and Y axis, then you will get a box. Okay, this is what is called Edgeworth's box. Okay, so now that Edgeworth box tells you that now the resources is fixed for x and y the total. So if they want to go up and up, they will move away from the origin. All right, so that itself imply that both are getting a higher and higher utility in that sense, going for higher and higher utility of x and y with a different combination, which is also has the Q marginal. Okay, so if that is the case, then the next utility curve gives a higher one. All right, now if they keep I mean, this is actually the kind of perspective where Pareto was being introduced. Okay, the Pareto efficient allocation comes at that particular point. Pareto efficient allocation is each individual is on highest possible indifference curve given the indifference curve the other individual. Now, this is a very interesting one which we have already seen. That is, if that is the case, A and B having two indifference curve, A alpha and beta are 2 points of intersection of the two individual, right? Now, if that is the case, then uh, a Pareto inefficient allocation and efficient allocation in such a way it forms that there is a rule that if efficiency means what, it is not possible to have a situation is actually being efficient if and only if in that situation nobody or any alteration of that situation to another point gives a better utility for uh, the other person, uh, then that situation is inefficient. That is, the original situation is then treated as inefficient. Otherwise, if the reallocation makes no improvement of the other, then you call it is optimally allocated. And that optimal allocation is what is called efficient allocation. Okay, that means nobody is going to get better off in that sense. So Paretian sense, it is no one get better off without making anyone worse off. If that is the condition, then you can say that the allocation of resources is optimal and hence efficient. Okay. So otherwise, you can say that if there is a possibility of not making anybody worse off, at the same time, somebody can get better off. Now, if that is a kind of situation, then you can say you are not making the other person better or worse off. Then that sort of an allocation can call that there is a possibility of an efficiency improvement without altering the efficiency, without altering the, but then the allocation is not efficient. It is possible improvement. But the original one can also be an optimal one, but a reallocation can be better than that. All right, where you are not changing the entitlement at all, but at the same without changing the entitlement and making the other person worse off, without making other person worse off. Still, if you are improving the person, then this is called an improvement, Pareto improvement. So this is, these concepts are completely different in that sense. Now, that is, we can simply understand with the help of this box, which is called the Edgeworth box diagram of two individuals' perspective. In fact, it's a perspective box in that sense. All right. Now, the Pareto inefficient allocator, that is alpha and beta, are Pareto inefficient. Why alpha and beta is inefficient? So look into that alpha and beta. Now, look at alpha, there is a possibility of moving away from alpha to some point where uh, alpha, the A's utility is not going to be altered. At the same time, B is unable to strike that balance. All right. Okay. Similarly, point B also having the same kind. So, because there exists a change in allocation starting from alpha to beta, that would make at least one individual better off without making the other individual worse off. So, if you look into that aspect, then you can say that one person get better off. That means the allocation of resources is not efficient. All right, it is inefficiently allocated. That is, there is a possibility of potential improvement of allocation of a given situation to something else, then you can say that the given situation of the first kind is inefficiently being allocated. This is what we said in the beginning. Now, if you look into the data a little bit carefully, or the diagrammatic representation a little bit carefully, then you can see it's clear. Now, in the alpha and beta case is actually of the same kind if you look into, and then there is a gamma possibility that gives B better off, but not actually A worse off. So the gamma is actually a kind of situation where you achieve still a reallocation makes one person better off without making the other person worse off. So there is a possibility of an improvement in that sense. Now, if there is a possibility of an improvement of a given allocation, then you can say that the former allocation is inefficient when you compare that with the current one. So this is what is called a potential improvement. Now, if the potential improvement exists, then every allocation is inefficient in that sense. Any allocation which is having a potential improvement, then the every allocation of that kind is going to be inefficient in that sense. So this is pretty clear, very standard. So this is what is actually Pareto was talking about. So with the Edgeworth box diagram, it is pretty clear that this can be easily understood in that context. All right. So gamma is a Pareto efficient point. Now, when you say that now potential improvement leads to efficiency, now that point is called Pareto efficient. Now, if you say that point is Pareto efficient, if and only if no reallocation is going to make anyone better off. Now, if there is a room for anyone get better off, then you can say that again that point is inefficient. There is a possibility of another point which perhaps give an efficient kind of situation. So then that is not optimal. So this is what is actually the kind of logic in which Pareto was discussing about. So at point allocation gamma, individual A is on the highest possible indifference curve. Given B is indifference curve and individual B is on the highest indifference curve given A's indifference curve. This is what is actually the gamma. Now, therefore, gamma is a Pareto efficient allocation, as I said. See, look at the gamma. So, gamma is actually the best where any improvement, so to say very clearly, no improvement is possible from that particular, because A is highest possible indifference curve. Same the case with B also. So in that sense, any movement from that point will make a worse off situation of say in this case, if you are looking into gamma of A, then any improvement of A, as I said, in any reallocation from that point is going to give a worse off situation of B and vice versa. All right. So the two indifference curve are therefore tangential to each other in that sense. So the tangential point of which creates the gamma or the point gamma, you can say that all the tangential point of the Edgeworth box diagram in that sense is going to be efficient allocation. So now you can say that if you draw a tangential point of different combinations of A and B of X and Y, then you can get actually this contract curve. So this is what is called the contract curve of A and B, and this contract curve is an optimal curve. And now if it is two individual mechanism, two individual world, then you can say that distribution has no role here. Only the matter is efficiency. So this is the first lesson one has to keep in mind. There is nothing to do with the distribution because distribution is given. That is, was X and Y is given, entitlement is given. Therefore, if A have 99% of the wealth and B 1%, but the efficiency or the contract efficiency or reverse or 50-50 whatever combination you talk. This contract curve is in fact talks about that possibility. All right. Now this is distribution is regardless of whatever the distribution, the resources being efficiently allocated over the contract curve. So this is what is the first and foremost observation while talking about the efficiency understanding of um, general equilibrium in that sense. Okay, joining up this Pareto efficient point yields the contract curve in that sense. So the curve connected all Pareto efficient allocation is known as the contract curve. At each point on the contract curve, the MRS for A and B are equal in that. That is the marginal rate of substitution, which we have already discussed in the first semester, so I don't want to spend much time on it. So MRS of A and of X and Y and MRS of B of X and Y is going to be one and the same here. So the substitution between X and Y by A and B of A, X and Y of A and B is one and the same in that context. So the marketplace, an auctioneer adjusts the product, an imaginary kind of situation. That is what is called the auctioneer, which is the term, as I said in the beginning of the first lecture, that I've been introduced by Leon Walras in his general equilibrium framework. So this auctioneer, this imaginary person or the entity, adjust the product price Px and Py until the following three conditions hold. Alright, that is, the first condition is marginal rate of substitution of A, which is going to be equal to the price ratio Px Py, and the second one is marginal rate of B is also going to be equal to the price ratio of X and Y. Okay, and the third condition is demand for X is equal to the entitlement of X, or X entitlement, and demand for Y is also going to be equal to the entitlement or complaint. So this third one is actually resource exhaustion. There is nothing you can actually keep or save or something like that. If that is the case, then things are going to be difficult to say general equilibrium is going to achieve. So if that is the case, then if you have all the three conditions met, then immediately you will get this situation, that is your Px Py, as that is your ratio or slope is going to be equal to the utility of A and B of X and Y, which is given as the entitlement of A and B. Now, if that is the case, then your Edgeworth box exchange summary gives you a kind of an equilibrium where you may be having any kind of distribution, but the resource is being allocated very, very efficiently. So maybe X individual A is having more and B is having less, or B is having more and A is having less, or both may be having the same, but irrespective of that fact, your resources are exhausted or efficiently allocated between A and B. So this is what is called the exchange efficiency. Now, you also have a production on the contrary. Now, once you have exchange efficiency, then there is always a possibility of a production economy is case. So, two firms produces two product, as I said in the very beginning, that production economy, two firm produces two product X and Y. Firm uses two factors of production to produce one, K and L. Then this is the K and L also being treated as a fixed entitlement. Then you can have actually the same production Edgeworth box diagram, which you just change the exchange economy into production economy. And then you convert A is utility instead of A is utility. You talk about the firm's production of X and firm's production of Y. And again, the same logic, if you apply, you will get actually the kind of Edgeworth and the indifference curves and its interaction and the intersection, sorry, the tangentiation of that particular points gives you a contract, that is production contract. This is what may be perhaps calls the contract curve, which is actually talks about the production. So the marketplace case marketplace, that is production economy equilibrium, again possibly done by this auctioneer, adjusts the factor price pi, which is equal to w, and pk is which pl, sorry, not pi, pl, which is equal to wage, and the pk, that is the price of the capital, is also r, the interest rate, until the following three conditions hold, as we have already said earlier, which is exactly the dual of what we said. Sorry, not in that sense of a dual. This is exactly the replica of marginal rate of substitution. Here, what is not substitute based on utility, what you do, product transformation or marginal rate technical substitution. You do there, you do utility substitution, or no, product commodity substitution for having a same level of utility. In this case, you are actually technology you substitute, that labor and capital you substitute in order to have the same level of output. So your marginal rate of technical substitution of x, which is equal to the wage and interest ratio, that is w by r, and the second case is mrts of y, which is also equal to w by r. So that also gives you a demand for L, which is equal to L bar, and a demand for K is also going to be K bar. That means there is a complete exhaustion of capital labor in this economy also, that is full employment. And this is what Keynes called the full employment situation. All right, full employment of capital labor, as well as the full employment or a full exchange of complete exchange of x and y. That was the first case, and this is the second case. So we can see the parallel here, but they never use the word in macro and micro interchangeably. But idea is one and the same in that sense. So now, if you have the product market as well as the commodity market, now we know that the product and commodity market are going to be equilibrium cleared, then the production possibility curve follows from that. That is, each product point of on the production possibility curve is a Pareto efficient point. This is what is actually another important point which we draw out of it. Every point in the production possibility curve, that is the upper point, that the frontier is actually an efficient locus of point of efficient uh, production of given x and y and k and l. So this is what is actually it talks about. So your marginal rate of technical substitution of x of k lk is equal to marginal rate of technical substitution of y and l. So points lies inside the curve is actually Pareto inefficient, which the logic of that we have already seen in the Edgeworth box diagram. An intersection of two possible distribution, or which will tell you that it is not optimally been allocated, because that allocation gives somebody better off without making the other worse off. So if that is the case, then there is a possibility of an improvement, and that improvement is actually says that the first allocation was inefficient, Pareto inefficient, and when you compare that with the other one. So if that is the case, then you will move ahead, you will move towards the frontier, and that frontier production possibility frontier is always gives you the best allocation, and there you cannot basically uh, improve. From that point you cannot improve. So that is what is called the optimal point, and that optimal points are called efficient point in that sense. Now, of x and k, why it is concave and all, it is actually operates in that sense increasing return in that sense. So why somebody has to move from one state to another, it is actually because of an increasing return. So there is a possibility. Now averages are basically, sorry, extremes are preferred over averages in that context, which is quite opposite of what is we have seen in the utility curves, where basically averages are greater than the extremes, which is called the convexity of the curve. In this case, it is concave. So where on PPC, how much x and how much y should be produced. So the slope of PPC is equal to the delta y by delta x, how many units of y that have been given up in order to produce one more unit of x in that context. So the marginal rate of product transformation, or the MRTP, is what is actually talks in that particular point. Now, if all the three things are given, then it is from that 3 points, it is quite clear that general equilibrium can be easily attainable. That is, in equilibrium, firm will produce at point on the production possibility at which MRTP, which is equal to Px by Py, and if MRTP is less than Px by Py, then produce more x and less y. MRTP is greater than Px by Py, then produce less x and more y. SI is MRS is equal to P, which is equal to MRTP yxy, and MR, which is equal to MRS, give you an equilibrium. So the slope of the production possibility found here is equal to the Px by Py. Okay, so different Px by Py gives a different production technique of capital and labor. Now, if you go for more capital or less labor, which will give you different data, and that data of different capital labor intensity will give you this sort of a concavity. But every time you have actually a switch between that. All right. So, which is also says that you substitute capital for labor and labor for capital in that context, then you will have different sort of production techniques being applied. So you can have different techniques here. So you can have actually different output, same output with a different combination of x and y and k and l. So all this is in fact forms the kind of equilibrium. So that is what is actually been given. Now your x and y is given, you have x and y. So that is the maximum. Out of that x and y, individual b and individual a forms, and you can have recall the marginal rate of substitution with respect to px by py. Then you will get actually somewhere your utility being attained, and your utility curve is intersects, tangentiate. So any point within that is actually any given combination of that with the different entitlements is actually being said that it is efficient. So then the three conditional general equilibrium follows from, if this diagram is clear, then this diagram is nothing but these three conditions. That is marginal rate of substitution of xy, which is equal to marginal rate of b of xy, which is equal to bx by py. Now, in the second instance, we have already looked at the marginal rate of technical substitution of capital as labor and capital of x, and marginal rate of technical substitution of production of y with the labor and capital, which is going to be equal to the price of labor, the ratio of price of labor of and price of capital, that is PL by P, which is also going to be equal to the wage rate and the interest rate, that is the ratio of the wage and interest. All right. Then the third condition, as we have already discussed, that the MRPT, that is marginal rate of product transformation. Okay, technical substitution of the x and y, and now the product transformation of xy, which is equal to px by py, and which is equal to marginal rate of substitution of x and y. So if all the three conditions met, then immediately you can say that you will be at equilibrium. So this is what is called the general equilibrium. So once you have all the factor market and product market is in equilibrium, then your production, every market is in equilibrium in that sense. So this is what is actually roughly we talk about the general framework of the general equilibrium. With this, let me conclude today's lecture. Hope that all of you enjoyed the lecture. So we will come back with the welfare economic aspect of general equilibrium. Thank you for watching and listening to the lecture. Thank you so much.